Hi, I'm Catherine Goshen, a professional astrologer from the village of Nyack in New York State, and I'm passionate about in-depth astrology and getting to the heart of the matter. In this video, we're going to finish off the final series on houses, looking at houses 3, 6, 9, and 12. And these are very interesting houses because they generally get very little said about them. They are called cadent houses. Cadent means falling away from the angles. And in video 1, we looked at those important angular houses, 1, 4, 7, and 10. Now, the cadent houses, they're falling away from the angles. They're not as powerful. In the cardinal or angular houses is where we initiate action. They are very much out in the world. The cadent houses, they deal with hidden themes, with hidden topics. And the energy of the cadent houses is that they are reactive. Whatever planets are falling in the cadent houses, 3, 6, 9, and 12, they're going to have to work harder to manifest their energies, because the cadent houses have this falling away from the angles energy about them, and they are not as, the planets that are in these houses are not as able to act. They are not as strong as if they were in an angular house or possibly in a succedent house. So let's think about the third house. We know that traditionally the third house is about our brothers and sisters. It's about communication. It's about our early schooling, where we went to school when we were children. And it deals with these types of issues, short journeys, going around the neighborhood, and so on and so forth. On a more psychological level, which is important to us as modern people, House 3 is about our mindset. Our mindset is ruled by the planet Mercury, but we can tell a lot about the way we think and whether our mindset tends towards the serious or the light-hearted, just from looking and understanding that third house. And mindset is so important. It affects everything else in the chart. So the quality of the ruler of that third house and planets in it is going to permeate the entire chart. As you think, so you are. And if you have concerns with your self-worth in house 2, that's going to flow on and affect your mindset. If you have concerns with your father in early development, with the roots of your family, that is going to affect your mindset. And isn't it interesting how the mindset, how we communicate, is linked also to our brothers and sisters and our early education? In other words, the way we think is inseparable from what we received in the early home and in the early school system. So next time you think that you have strong opinions about this or that, strong political opinions or strong opinions about anything, reflect back on the fact that the only reason you think the way you do is because of the influence of that third house. And in this way, astrology can make us more tolerant, and it can enable us to step back a little bit and to view our lives with increasing detachment. How do we work with our third house? How do we see what's going on there and realize that it may not be aligned with our sun, which is our solar principle? We've spoken in previous videos about the soul purpose, about the energy of the sun that wishes to shine through and permeate our lives. And if we have a mindset that is incredibly negative or that goes against our own best interests, we are making it challenging for the light of the sun to shine through. So lots to think about with that third house. So opposite that third house, because we're working on that axis, is the ninth house. So the ninth house is going to deal with higher education, all right? When we leave school and we go to college or university, if we are lucky enough to have that opportunity to study further. In that same vein, it represents travel further afield. We're leaving the neighborhood and we're going out into the world to experience something beyond our own borders. And in the sense, that ninth house is a very positive house because it wants us to expand. It's also the house of religion. It is the house of our spiritual teachers. And it really is meant to be a place of expansion. How do we work with that ninth house? Do we give it room to breathe? Is the ruler of that ninth house in a challenging position? So maybe we weren't given the opportunity to study further and to expand our minds. How are we going to work with that? Everything in the chart is there because it's necessary for our own individual lives. If you have a challenged or challenging ninth house, you want to find ways to give yourself room to expand, even if it is not literally going to college. One can educate yourself. There are incredible libraries at our disposal, practically worldwide. There is a lot of information on the internet, on YouTube, that is free. And there is always a way to work with that ninth house and to expand. It wants us, if we can't travel, maybe we can armchair travel and educate ourselves on different countries through this wonderful internet that we have. As always, we're looking to see how do those two houses balance each other. How do they work together? Is our mindset, our third house, able to expand and grow through the ninth as we age and reach maturity into our mature years? Or are we still stuck in a pattern, maybe a negative learning pattern from the early school years that's preventing us expanding, growing, enriching ourselves, which is what each and every one of your charts wants to do. Now let's look at the 6th and the 12th houses. All right, again, they're working in that axis. 6, 8, and 12 are traditionally known as malefic or difficult houses because they deal with difficult topics. The 6th house generally deals with sickness, acute sickness, getting sick, hopefully getting better. It also deals with service. The 8th house with loss and death. The 12th house also with some kind of loss. That does not mean that these are bad houses, and this is very important to understand. You've lived enough life now to know that life is not all roses, roses, roses. We have to have some suffering. And suffering normally comes in the form of one of those 3 houses, 6, 8, or 12. How do we deal with it and how do we move on from it? In a sense, these are the most spiritual houses because it is through some kind of suffering that we expand and we grow. Hopefully we realize a little bit more that life is not just only about taking our own pleasure, and we begin to see that there is much work to be done. And in this way, those malefic houses become incredibly rich and incredibly helpful in our own spiritual development. So the 6th house can be illness, it can be servants, it can be serving. If you are in a service profession and love to help others, any kind of service profession, you may have a strong 6th house. And there is some element of drudgery associated with that house. conflict with co-workers, or just that daily grind that one has to get through, that we all have to go through in order to make a living. So check out your 6th house. If you can get things balanced there, not overwork, and have a healthy 6th house, things tend to flow on, and you can develop into a healthy 7th house, which is the house of relationships. So again, everything hangs together. The 6th house can be very much about learning humility and being able to be of service when the need arises. So the 6th house is opposite the 12th house. Let's talk a little bit about this 12th house. The unconscious, things that are hidden from the obvious, ordinary, day-to-day life. These reside in the 12th house. The 12th house can also be very much about influences that are beyond one's control. And in such, we can see big government in the 12th house. Many politicians have a strong 12th house. The 12th house can also deal with hidden enemies, things that we just don't see, things that might be harmful to us, such as chronic illness. So the 12th house is a place to respect. And the positive side of this 12th house is that planets natally that are in your 12th house, they have to arc and come forward into your ascendant. They will, over time, move out of the 12th house into the 1st to become visible. And that can be your richest treasure, to know that you have this 12th house, and that while much is hidden, there will always come a time in your life when this needs to be looked at, it needs to be confronted, it needs to be dealt with, and it needs to come out in the open. And in this way, the 12th house is also a spiritual house. Things that happen in the 12th house, when we get planets transiting the 12th house, they are there because we have to deal with something very deep and unconscious within ourselves. And by the time we've worked it through, those planets leave the 12th house and they emerge out into the light of the ascendant. I think that's enough in-depth astrology for one day. There is, of course, always much more to say, but it's really worthwhile trying to integrate what's been given and to learn how to apply it to your own chart. If you found this video at all helpful, please like and subscribe. Please post your comments below. We could have a fascinating discussion on the houses. It can be very, very helpful to share and to try to integrate all the information between these 3 videos. Wishing you all the best until next time.